Hello, everyone. Jason Hagholm here, and we're gonna try to start doing something, more doing pre-fight cover or post-fight coverage, I should say, of these UFC events. As we had a pretty solid UFC fight night last night, UFC Vegas 19, which was headlined by Derek Lewis and Curtis Blades. And to help me break it all down is the postmaster of mixed martial arts from postwrestling.com. Eric Marcotte. Eric, how are you doing?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me here. Yeah, it was a pretty fun fight night. But before we get into it, I have to ask because this has been bothering me for a while now. How long are we gonna keep going with like the UFC Vegas 19, UFC Vegas 20 thing? I need to know.
I feel like, well, at least we're guaranteed up until March, right? With we have a fight night next weekend, which is UFC Vegas 20, and then we have a pay-per-view, so we know that's a numbered card, and then
Yeah,
following that off, we have another fight. I mean, look, we're going to be on Vegas up until they can find another place or they go back to Abu Dhabi because, I mean, that's at least been handy for the hashtags because they're only running two places, either it's Abu Dhabi or Vegas. So it's been handy for the hashtags where you don't have to try to figure it out like Fight Night 609 or whatever it may be.
yeah, true, true. It's a good way of saying it. That just every time I go through, I try to find the first hashtag of the night, and like a bunch of them pop up, and I'm like, oh man, which one is this? Is this 19? Is this 18? I don't know.
Well, then Twitter always tricks you with somehow it loses the 19 hashtag. It's like
Yeah.
18, and then you're like, oh no, that was last week's show.
So that doesn't just happen to me.
No,
That's a
that's
Twitter.
definitely
Wow.
that's a Twitter thing where
Okay.
people, I guess, bots or whatever, try to mess us up. But
Good to know.
those MMA fans, we're too good for their tricks that Twitter does have. But yeah, Eric, this was a pretty interesting, fight night card. Which these fight nights sometimes you don't get the amount of finishes and the style of finishes that we get. And let's run it down from the top. I mean, it was the fight everyone was looking forward to the most. The fourth of our heavyweight fights on this card. Derek Lewis versus Curtis Blades. Really, Blades was looking in a position where if he got by Lewis, he'd definitely be in the running to be either the next or the second likely contender for fight for the heavyweight title. And Blades looked good early. I thought, he didn't get he went for a takedown, didn't get it, but respected the power and the striking that Derek Lewis brings to the table. But by the second round, he shot in for that takedown yet again. And Derek Lewis, he figured it out, caught him with a brutal uppercut, dropped Blades out cold. He hit his head on the back of the canvas hard. And then Lewis followed up with like three shots that weren't really needed, but were just the icing on the cake. But nonetheless, Derek Lewis, he does it again. He proves, why he's one of the most heavy-handed strikers in not just the UFC, but mixed martial arts as a whole. And, he's on a 4-fight win streak, and he's now looking at potentially fighting for a title.
I mean, yeah, he reinserted himself into title contention with a win over a guy at the likes of Curtis Blades. And I think you were right on the money. Curtis Blades looked fantastic in round one. There was a time not too long ago that Curtis Blades getting the better of Derek Lewis on the feet
Mm-hmm.
seemed an impossibility, but that's exactly what was happening. He was winning the stand up exchanges, he was tagging Lewis and hurting him. But the difference maker was whenever he went for the takedown to take the fight into his comfort zone, Lewis had it well scouted. And when he went to the same well twice in rapid succession in round two, yeah, got flatlined.
I think when you look at Lewis, like we know he's got, great hands, but this is a guy that's had underrated takedown defense for his entire run in the UFC. I mean, Blades is a decorated wrestler and really didn't get the takedown at all in this fight. And then you match it up with a guy that's got good takedown defense, heavy hands, and is really healthy for the first time in a long time. He's had some surgeries to correct his back, some knees. He's lost a bit of weight as well. Like, this is the more durable, I think, Derek Lewis we could get. And, he's now really motivated to get that title shot. And with a performance like that, you can definitely see why he's at the front of the line looking to fight, potentially the winner of Stipe Miocic or Francis Ngannou.
I mean, there's definitely a bit of a logjam right now. I mean, we have Stipe versus Francis coming up. Hopefully that fight sticks together. And then the big rumor that we all think is probably going to happen sometime this summer is the winner of that fight against John Jones. In his post-fight interview, Lewis said that he wanted to stay busy and he
Mm-hmm.
called out Alistair Overeem. I don't know if that's a fight that makes any sense, but it's a fight I could see happening in the upcoming months.
Yeah, he did call out Overeem, which, as you said, doesn't make sense considering Overeem just lost handedly a couple weeks ago to Alexander Volkov. But he also called out like Izzy,
Yeah.
Adesanya, and all these guys that may be making their way up to the heavyweight division. I don't know. Nonetheless, Lewis continues to look as one of the best heavyweights out there in mixed martial arts. But yeah, and for Blades though, this is a tough loss to come back from when you looked so good in the first round, and now you kind of got to look like where at the landscape does Blades go from here?
This was a really tough loss for Curtis Blades. I mean, this is the second time this has happened. I mean, his last loss against Francis Ngannou was a very similar case where it looked like he was just about to get a title shot. And then, yeah, he got knocked out in a couple seconds by Francis, as a lot of Francis Ngannou fights go. And he finds himself in the same position now. He was coming into this fight, he was in the position that Derek Lewis is now in. He was on a 4-fight win streak. He would have had a title shot if the division wasn't so log jammed, and now he has to restart again. So, yeah, very tough loss for Blades. There's plenty of fights at heavyweight for him to have next. I mean, but a title shot is not in his future right now.
No, definitely not. But I think the one thing with this card, as we'll talk about, as we said, this was the main event with four heavyweight fights. Like this heavyweight division, UFC is really starting to get in gear and put some shine on it. I mean, we have another heavyweight main event next weekend with Cyril Gane and Jairzinho Rosenstruck. So maybe the loser of that ends up fighting Curtis Blades down the line, whether it be in the summer or what have you. But yeah, UFC's really putting the spotlight on their heavyweight division, which is kind of nice to see.
Yeah, I mean, first off, that's a very good call for a next fight for Blades. And yeah, I mean, I've sort of felt this way for the last year or two that, I mean, there were some dark days for heavyweights earlier in the decade, but I feel like the division's really rebuilt itself. If you look at the top 10, top 15 right now, it's pretty much as solid as it's been in a very long time.
And plus, you have some prospects that we'll get to on this show that are looking to be gunning for, potentially fighting for a title within maybe the next year or so. But let's look at the co-main event now. Yana Kunitskaya against Ketlin Vieira. This was an interesting one. I mean, it was, Vieira missed weight. She missed the women's bantamweight limit of 136 pounds by 2 pounds. She weighed at 138. Never a good look, especially for a weigh-in like this, where we had a lot of fights. Fighters miss weight, and one fight gets scrapped because of a almost 12-pound discrepancy of a weight miss.
Completely insane.
Yeah, like you've missed 2 weight classes pretty much, which is but that fight didn't end up happening. But nonetheless, here Vieira, she looked good early, got the takedown and was able to control and use her jiu-jitsu to pretty much thoroughly control Kunitskaya. But then Kunitskaya was able to get a nice reversal, change things off in the second round when Vieira got the takedown. And it really came down to the third round, Eric, where Vieira got the takedown, was controlling, looking for some ground and pound, but it was Kunitskaya that got a switch, worked in half guard, and closed the show with some nasty hammer fists and ground and pound. And that was overall really the turning point of the fight. And I guess it goes to show what judges are looking for. Like, you can control someone, but if you're not doing much damage or action, that may be the deciding factor, and especially in a fight like that.
Yeah, this really showed off the evolution in the judge's mindset for scoring fights. There was a time not too long ago where this definitely would have been a unanimous 29-28 decision for Ketlin Vieira, but Kunitskaya was far more active, even though she spent a lot of time off her back. So I think the judge's decision was completely fair here.
Yeah, I can totally see it. Like, I had it 29-28 for Vieira.
So did I.
But I can see where you would, like, it's not a robbery. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, but like a robbery is if you are clearly controlling a fight and then, the judges see it one way, or, Chris Lee scoring your fight, for example. So, but yeah, I thought, a good win for Kunitskaya, especially, how she came on towards the end and got the win over Vieira. But I mean, for Vieira, I mean, that's a double whammy, right? You not only lose the fight, but you miss weight by a decent amount of pounds. That's something that's definitely not going to put her in the good graces of the UFC.
No, I mean, Vieira, not unlike Curtis Blades, was pretty close to a title shot not too long ago. And now she's dropped 2 of her last 3, missed weight here. She's in a tough position right now.
Yeah, she definitely is. And then moving on, we had Derek Minor versus Charles Rosa. And man, Derek Minor, what a fun fighter. Like, this is a guy that, he came into the fight having won, 25 fights, and 22 of them were by submission. And he was looking for that submission yet again. He was looking to get his 23rd submission. Couldn't quite get it, but as dominant on the ground as Minor was, he would like have a slight lapse that gave Rosa some opportunities to, nearly get an arm bar or go for a triangle choke. And Rosa had a couple times almost got that arm bar. If Minor wasn't so slick on the ground, he may have been caught in it. But yeah, just another solid, dominant ground performance by Derek Minor. And he came away with a solid unanimous decision win.
Yeah, I mean, while the ground game is his bread and butter, and that's where he felt comfortable taking the fight, it felt like when they were standing, if Minor kept the fight there, he probably would have gotten a finish. He looked very good on the feet. He hurt Charles Rosa a couple of times. So all in all, just a great performance for him.
And Rosa's a guy who's been in the UFC a while. He's a very durable guy. But if you look at Rosa's track record, it's a lot of win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. He came into this fight with a win in his last fight before this one, and then now is on the loss. So if when Rosa gets his next fight, you can definitely put the money down on him, because he's on a trend where he's set for a win in that fight. So and you know what, Rosa, like I said, he's durable, and he kept fighting. And I will say that some of these guys, especially when you get manhandled on the ground like that, they just give it up and no, it's not their night. They'll fight another day. But he was still fighting, looking for the arm bars. But Minor's just a fun grappler too.
Yep, it was a pretty fun fight, and I think this was his best performance in UFC thus far.
Yeah, I totally would agree with that. And then we moved on to another heavyweight fight with another heavyweight prospect, Chris Daukaus, Alexei Oleinik. This was, Chris Daukaus is a guy that, he said before the fight, he's looking to save a little bit of the money up so he can, get out of his job as being a police officer for the Philadelphia Police Department. And when you continue to have, fights that end in the first round in the UFC, that's definitely a great way of that. He looked fantastic. His hands and his power, his just accuracy of his punches really hurt, and did a good job as well of stuffing that takedown where, we know Oleinik, he's, a master of like that Von Flue choke, was trying to pull him on top so he could try to set it up. But Daukaus was able to fight that off and then just go to town with some punches and knees. And before Herb Dean maybe jumped in a little late to stop the fight, but nonetheless stops it. And Chris Daukaus now 3 fights in the UFC and 3 first-round finishes.
Yeah, I mean, for Daukaus, 3-0 with 3 first-round finishes. That's about as impressive as you're gonna start off in the UFC, unless you're like an Anderson Silva who has a title fight win and a title defense in your first 3 fights. But yeah, he's made an impact. He'll be ranked after this, and this fight was actually kind of hard to watch because Alexei Oleinik was showing his age. He looked rough in there.
Yeah, I mean, for Daukaus as well, it's great to get that name on there, but I don't want to see Alexei Oleinik continue to take the damage. Like, he took damage here against Daukaus. He took damage against Derek Lewis in his last fight. So I don't know, like it's cool to see some of these guys that have been fighting, since like almost 4 decades now of mixed martial arts action. But it's maybe time for Oleinik to start thinking about packing it in, because these heavyweights are just getting younger, quicker, and hitting with more force. And Oleinik found out the hard way from Chris Daukaus.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some older guys you can still get in there with if he's not ready to call it quits. I mean, just on this card alone, put him in there with Andrei Arlovsky, right? But yeah, I don't need to see him against any more of these young guys.
No, but I mean, and Daukaus is one of the the heavyweight prospects that, strikes out at you, right? Because of the 3 wins in the first round, his brother fights in the UFC. This is just a really talented prospect that, put up there with tougher competition. He passed with flying colors. I'm excited to see where it goes for Daukaus. He didn't call anyone out. He says, I'm going to be ranked and I'll fight anyone in front of me. But this is a guy that I think we can really keep our eyes out on for making a good run towards, at least breaking the top 5 this year.
Well, technically, Bisping prodded him for an answer, and he brought up the name of Stipe Miocic, and that does not seem likely, but, shoot for the stars.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. He did say, well, what the heck, give me the heavyweight champion. Yeah, I mean, it's not going to happen. Yeah, it's not going to happen, but, you never know. This is MMA, and it's wild things could happen. I don't see it happening, but...
One short notice replacement away.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Francis, you get hurt, and if Dawkins is on the card, you're coming on in. But then we had a very interesting fight. This was a fight that's supposed to happen back on Fight Island with Phil Hawes against Nasruddin Imavov. And, Hawes, they really were putting like kind of the rocket ship to him to really market him as, a top guy at this 185-pound division, especially coming off like a 36-second or a very short debut that he had back at UFC 249. And this wasn't that type of fight for Phil Hawes. He really just wanted to showcase his wrestling and pin Imavov up against the fence. But when Imavov broke off, like he unloaded and hurt Hawes a couple of times. And if he maybe had avoided a clinch or had another minute or so, he could have potentially finished Hawes, because Hawes was on Dream Street, had the stanky leg going in a couple times. But, it was just the wrestling that did enough to hold off and win at least 2 out of the 3 rounds. And Phil Hawes got the win. And I don't know, I feel like the win was nice, but I've never seen, it's one of those where you look worse in a win than you could have. And the guy that lost actually may have gained some just for how he was continuing to fight and did hurt Hawes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's great, of course, to get your hand raised. That's what matters at the end of the night. I don't think this was a great night for either man. I mean, after the first round, where I thought he really did look solid, Hawes was getting hurt almost every time they engaged. And for Imanov, whenever he hurts Hawes, he immediately got taken down or wrapped up, and he wasn't able to stop that. So I thought this was a bit of a rough fight for both guys. I scored the fight 29-28 for Hawes. I did give Imavov that final round, but yeah.
Well, Imavov had that moment where he really hurt Hawes, like with a minute left in the fight. And then it was like he clinched with Hawes, which I thought was like, what are you doing? Just separate. Like, you have the man hurt, but I mean, in the heat of battle, right? You think that can happen. But nonetheless, like Imavov, I thought, honestly, Imavov brought his stock up by, he got controlled up against the fence and whatnot, but to be able to hurt Hawes and, find ways to try to make it a fight, that I think will look better for you in the UFC than Hawes, who, as Dana White would say, if this was a Contender Series fight, Hawes used too much wrestling.
Yes, yeah. It wasn't a star-making performance.
But then post-fight, Hawes gets the win, as we said, and Bisping's interviewing him, and Bisping asks him, who do you want next? And Hawes says, well, I know Chris Weidman and Uriah Hall are fighting next. So if one of them gets COVID, I'd like to step in there. I mean, it just came off so bad. Like he's praying for COVID for one of these two so Phil Hawes can come on in. I know what he meant, like if one of them gets hurt, but he's specifically saying COVID, and it seemed like you're wishing COVID on someone. That's a first for us tonight. We had a lot of firsts on this show, and this was definitely a first.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I hope I'm not misquoting him, but I feel like his exact wording was like, oh, hopefully one of them gets COVID or something. So it just sounded so, he wasn't serious about it. It sounded so bad.
But just how he said it, like hopefully one of them gets COVID. Like, no, hopefully none of them get COVID, because we know the effects that this can have, especially for once you get over. I mean, look at if you've seen the videos of Khamzat Chimaev, who's right now dealing with it. Like it's scary. It just came off so bad from Phil Hawes, and I would wonder if there's some damage control from his management. But overall, a win for Hawes, but I don't know if it gets everyone that excited to see Phil Hawes again. Like he has the power, he can make it happen, and unfortunately, that's kind of what this sport is. It's especially with the UFC wants, they want you to kind of make it like a video game. And if you're not having those video game early finishes and you just want to clinch with someone, it just didn't give a good taste in a lot of people's mouths for what they expected this fight to be.
Yeah, not a great night for him, but hey, he got his hand raised, and at the end of the day, that's all that matters.
And then we started the main card off with another heavyweight fight, Tom Aspinall, Andrei Arlovski. And, Tom Aspinall is a guy that could probably, of the heavyweight prospects on this card, is definitely number one in my book. And maybe within a year and a half, he could be fighting for a heavyweight title. Just absolutely manhandled the former heavyweight champion, Andrei Arlovski.
Yep. I mean, this was a terrific performance, and I'm in the same boat as you. Unless you want to still count Cyril Gane as a prospect and not a contender, then this guy's at the top of my prospect list. I'm really impressed by him.
Yeah, I would definitely say Gane's kind of outreached the prospect. If you're giving him a main event, a status against, Jairzinho Rosenstruck, I think Gane's kind of made it out there. And I'm with you. I believe Gane is probably the next future champion of that division. But Aspinall, for a guy that's, still so young, and to just do what he did to Arlovsky, like Arlovsky's the gatekeeper, right? Like Tanner Boser had a chance against Arlovsky, didn't go his way. I know Boser will be back, but Aspinall passed with flying colors. Like, you don't see many people just manhandle and choke out Arlovsky with such ease.
Yeah, no, that was, well, actually, I can hardly remember a time Arlovsky's ever been submitted. Maybe once before in his career, but this was a very big win for Tom Aspinall. And like you said, Arlovsky's kind of been the gatekeeper to that top 15 for the past, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. And, whenever somebody beats Andrei Arlovsky and moves into the top 15, it usually means Alistair Overeem's next. So I think we'll be seeing that fight very soon.
You know what? That would make a lot of sense. I could see it for sure. I mean, Aspinall 10-2 as a pro, and I think it was something like Arlovsky made his UFC debut in 2000, in the year 2000, and Aspinall made it in the year 2020. So a 20-year gap between guys that have had their UFC appearances and they collided. But all in all, Aspinall continues to be one of the hotter prospects. Then when we closed out the prelims, we had Jared Gordon, Danny Chavez. This was a catch weight at 150. There was a little bit of heat between these two guys at the face-offs after the weigh-ins. I mean, Gordon missed weight, but it didn't really matter because Gordon was able to, even though he missed weight, he was able to go out there and put on just a dominant performance and really manhandled Chavez for all 3 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you see a guy dramatically miss weight and then control the fight via wrestling, it always kind of leaves a bit of a bad taste in your mouth. But Gordon really needed a win here, and he got it. So,
yeah, I mean, we talked about earlier, right, with Ketlin Vieira. She missed weight but lost, so that's definitely a double whammy. Whereas, you miss weight but you still win. Like, you're guaranteed another fight, and you can correct the weight issue going into your next fight. And Gordon's, he's been a veteran and one of the guys that's had a handful of fights in the UFC, and he looked good, 17-4, and we'll be looking to get back in there and just has to make the weight next time at 145. John Castaneda versus Eddie Wineland. This was a really fun fight because I thought it was pretty much even on the feet for a while. Both had their moments until Castaneda was able to just connect, absolutely drop the former WEC champion, and close the show in the first round. And it was kind of a night like that too, where fights looked like they were going one way and then they were just over in a blink of an eye.
Yeah, it was a bit of a rough night for the old guard as well.
Yeah.
Another stoppage loss for Eddie Wineland, unfortunately, but I didn't think he looked bad while the fight was going. He was tagging Castaneda. He landed some good shots. Just, he got caught and got finished.
Yeah, and I would agree. He did. Wineland still looks like he has a little bit left in the tank. It's not one of those where we want to see him retire just for his health. Though he is getting up there in age, I still think he's got, he can be a bad matchup for anyone on any night. Just got caught and dropped. And, the sexy Mexi, gets a huge win, moves to 18-5, and, and just another cog in the wheel of how deep bantamweight is in the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, Castaneda, he looked decent in his short notice debut, but I think we got a clear picture of what he's capable of here.
Yeah, for sure. Then we move on to what I thought was one of my more favorite fights of this night. It was a featherweight bout, Julian Erosa versus Nate Landwehr. I mean, for a fight that went like 56 seconds, this was everything you'd want in a fight that went 56 seconds where, they got tied up in the clinch. Erosa landed some good shots, but on the exit, Landwehr connected. And then as they were able to separate, Erosa clipped him. And then with putting Landwehr up against the fence. And then Erosa went in for the flying knee, dropped Landwehr. And Nate the Train was derailed as this fight was stopped pretty much right away by referee Mark Smith. And, Landwehr was protesting it. And, I can see why Landwehr may be upset because he wasn't like knocked unconscious or dazed. But when you go down in a heap like that from a flying knee, I can see why a referee would want to be in there right away. No extra shots needed. And, And as I always say, I'd rather have an early stoppage than a late stoppage, as we had some late stoppages on this show, which we will get into. But I'd rather have you stop it earlier because, Landwehr is still one of the more exciting guys, and he'll be back. And it's just the flying knees. That's just his downfall. These flying knees that keep happening. And unfortunately, he just can't get a break when they come his way.
Yeah, this fight was a ton of fun. You gotta love those sub-minute fights where they're just action-packed until the finish. I understood why Landwehr was a bit upset at the stoppage, but I had no qualms with it.
I had no qualms with it either. I get why he was mad, but I mean, even he seemed like he must have seen the replay back because he put a post up on Instagram. It's like, I got to get stopped, hit with flying knees. So he, I guess, realized it was probably a good stoppage. But as I said, I'd rather have an early stoppage than a late stoppage, as we're about to get into that. Casey O'Neill beat up Shanna Dobson. O'Neill's looking like a solid prospect, at women's 125. Really just, got the fight to the ground, controlled. Maybe could have finished in the first, but didn't have enough time, and then pretty much did wash, rinse, repeat once the second one happened, only this time getting the finish.
Yeah, I was super impressed by the pace that she showed in this fight. I mean, there wasn't a second where she wasn't on the attack. Showed off a pretty well-rounded game, kind of pummeling her way inside and then bringing it to the ground. I looked through her Tapology page, and she actually has 5-round experience. So that's a huge benefit for a fighter who's this early into her career.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, Shanna Dobson, she's tough, she's durable, but now 4-5 is a record. And, I really don't want to see her get cut just because she's the type of girl that always brings a fight, and especially last year where she had the upset of the year just on the betting side of things, with the biggest upset in UFC history on that side of things. But, UFC, they don't like you not having a winning record in there. So hopefully she can survive it just on, the style that she brings to the table, but the odds wouldn't be stacked in her favor that way.
Yeah, I think that's pretty well said. I mean, when you have a 4-5 record in the UFC, that's not a good look. And it's usually a pretty good sign that your time in the company is going to be limited. But she's typically entertaining, and I feel like that last win is enough to buy her another chance.
I would agree with you there. At least one more fight to see where things go. I'm trying to think who else had a losing record in the women's side of things that I think just got released. The name is escaping me, and I shouldn't. She fought Paige Van Zandt a while back.
I know who you're talking about too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like that's just how the sport rolls. It's like, I know who you are, but things have gone so on. We haven't seen her fight so much in the UFC recently. I think she did end up getting cut. So
she did, yeah.
Nonetheless, oh my God, this is gonna drive me. And I know people in the comments are gonna be like, "Oh, you idiots!" But
things move so fast,
Then we moved on to the lone Canadian on the card. Iman Zahabi versus Draco Rodriguez. Rodriguez, another guy that missed weight on this show. And, like I said, it was a double whammy for Vera. It was a double whammy for Rodriguez, who did look good early in the stand-up, and I thought was actually starting to get the better of Zahabi. But then Zahabi just came in and threw a punch that just, lit up and folded up Rodriguez. And, good for Zahabi. He snaps a 2-fight losing streak, gets his first finish in the UFC, and, can really, focus on, moving his ranks up this natural 135-pound division.
Yeah, I don't know if there was a fighter on this entire card who needed a win as much as Iman Zahabi needed a win tonight, especially in highlight fashion. He hasn't won a fight in the UFC since his debut in early 2017. So this was exactly what he needed, a big highlight first-round knockout to set him back on track.
I guess before we get to the opener prelim, we should talk about Chas Skelly was supposed to fight. So this is one of the more a first for sure in the UFC, where Chas Skelly comes out, he's ready to fight. He's prepped. He's in the prep point. And it's taking forever for his opponent, Jamal Emmers, to come out there. Like, something's has gone awry when Skelly's entrance music is just playing for a long period of time. And then we hear Brendan Fitzgerald saying that Emmers is having back spasms and he can't make the walk. So this fight is now canceled. So felt terrible for both. Feel really bad for Emmers, who your body starts to act up on you, like literally as you're about to make your walk out for your fight. I felt bad for Skelly, who's looking to have, a fight for the first time in a very long time in the UFC, and you don't even get to do it as you're standing in the cage. But Skelly, though, he made a valid point. He wants his win bonus, probably will get his win bonus, because he did make the weight and made the walk and at least made it to the cage. So yeah, that was an odd situation, but I thought Skelly and the UFC as a broadcast crew as a whole handled that really well.
I agree. I thought it was handled very well by all involved. I was pretty impressed by how classy Skelly was in his post-fight interview. A lot of fighters would be very angry at that moment, but I thought he was just pure class.
I can see why you'd be angry, but it's like there's nothing you can do. It's
it's
out of your control. It's out of your control. He put it right. It's like it sucks for Jamal, like that his body gave out on him literally a moment before he's supposed to walk out there and having these back spasms. So I would assume this fight instantly gets remade. Like they both know who their next opponent will be them again. Just hopefully Jamal can get over these back spasms, get healthy, and we have this fight again.
Rachel Ostovich.
Yes, Rachel Ostovich. That was the name. I for the life of me could not remember. I don't know why. But yeah, she had a losing record, and thought maybe her looks would keep her in the UFC, but unfortunately, records does matter.
In a similar situation to Dobson, where she was actually in some entertaining fights, just didn't put together that record that she needed.
Yeah. So so that just was one part of the crazy aspect of this, and then the opener, which was another heavyweight prospect that I'm really high on, Sergey Spivak, really manhandled Contender Series vet Jared Vanderaa. And really it was, for Spivak came in weighing 20 pounds lighter than Vanderaa, but was able to manhandle him, throw him around the octagon, get on top, and just in the second round especially, unload nasty hammer fists, ground and pound, busting open Vanderaa. And I honestly thought this fight should have been stopped like a minute and a half before it did. I have no idea what Chris Taioni was doing while looking at this. He was just literally up there almost watching a man get assaulted for just the sake of his entertainment. I don't know. Spivak is a solid prospect, especially for a guy that doesn't look all that harmful, but he has some serious wrestling and power and strength to be able to, maul a guy that weighed in at 265, was probably close to around that 300-pound mark by the time he got in the cage. But yeah, just the stoppage really upset me.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember taking too much umbrage with the stoppage, but it's not a fight I remember that well at this point. I will say Spivak dominated every second of this fight, and I thought this was his best UFC performance this far. Out of all the heavyweight prospects we've talked about tonight, I have him on a bit of a lower tier than those other guys, and part of that's the competition he's faced so far, or at least the competition he's won against. But I'll be excited to see him again, especially after this performance.
I could see the UFC making, I know Dawkins is going to probably get a number, but I could see a Spivak-Chris Dawkins fight because Dawkins, he may have, a solid set of hands and he's looked really good, but Spivak can find a way to close the distance, clinch up with you, and then throw you to the ground at will and either ground and pound you out or get a submission. So I'm pretty high on Spivak, the native of Moldova. So he looked really good, but man, it was this was also a night of, you had an early stoppage like we saw with the Mark Smith and the Nate Wanner fight, or Chris Taioni letting you get pummeled into a million pieces. And I don't know what it's going to take it's either going to have to come from the UFC, because the Nevada Commission keeps giving this guy assignments and he's going to literally get someone hurt or, dare I say, even killed. And that's the last thing anyone wants to see. But Vanderaa was taking punches. Vanderaa, you could see, was at the point where he gave up. When you kind of just turtle, it's over. I want to go to another fight at another time. And Taioni was just like, nah, you got to keep fighting. And I don't understand what it takes for this guy to continue to get assignments.
He gave him a chance to be a warrior.
I mean, I get it. I mean, maybe that's me from the media side, and talking with fighters, they want 10,000 chances to survive. But you can
Dominic Cruz would be furious with you right now.
Yeah, Dominic Cruz would be questioning my smell of alcohol and booze at this rate. But I just thought Taioni had a couple of moments on this card where he was just letting people get extra punches for no reason.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's always tough to watch. The main events, well, this was not Herb Dean's fault. He got there as quick as he could. It was uncomfortable watching Blades take those last three super heavy shots. It's one of the the darker parts of the sport.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, and as we said, the Blades one was just nasty because he was out when he got punched. He hit his head, and then those 3 extra shots. And I mean, I hate the extra shots, but unfortunately, that's just, as you said, how the sport is, where you have to keep fighting until the ref says stop or pulls you off someone. But like Chris Tony was just letting, Jared Venera just get punched like he had money against him or something. I don't know, just. Chris Tony has quickly become like one of the worst officials in all of MMA.
Yes, he has.
In a rapid rate.
Whenever a fighter turtles up, that's a sign that it's over. I mean, the one that immediately comes to mind, I think, was like Jose Aldo versus Piotr Jan, where Aldo was turtled up for like 2 minutes, and it was like, what am I watching right now?
Yeah, that was terrible. Like nearly letting Jan murk a legend in MMA. But yeah, I mean, all in all, though. As we said, this was a fun fight night show. These fight nights do tend to drag a bit, but this one did end a little bit early. I think it ended right around 11-ish, which isn't bad at all for some of these fight nights that can definitely hit the 12:30, 1 a.m. territory. But this one did not. Had a lot of good fights, a lot of good finishes. I believe 4 performance of the night bonuses were handed out as well to Lewis, Zahabi, I believe. Dawkins, and there's another one that I can't remember. Espinal, yeah. And why not, right? That was a fantastic performance, as we talked about. So yeah, like 4 performance of the night bonuses and a fun fight night card.
Yeah, it was really fun. And in terms of the length that you just brought up, it got me thinking about this pay-per-view, UFC 259 we have coming up in a couple of weeks with 15 fights and 3 title fights. We will be lucky to be finished by 3 a.m.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on the 3 title fights? Because Dana always said, like, after the debacle back when they came back with 3 title fights at like UFC 30, and it kind of it went over like the pay-per-view window. They never would do it again. Well, we've had a couple shows that have had 3 title fights, and we will, as we said, at UFC 259 on March the 6th. But yeah, like they're great fights, but the potential of every fight going 5-minute rounds, like, is there.
It is, but hey, when there's that many amazing fights on the card, I can never complain. I'm excited for that one.
I'm excited too. And I do think, though, of those title fights, like at least 2 out of the 3 we'll see a finish at somewhere in there.
Or get in 3 decisions.
Now we've jinxed it, right?
Yeah.
Damn us. We've jinxed it. We're getting 3 decisions. It's going to be a 4 a.m. pay-per-view finish time. So buckle up, everyone. But yeah, that was the fight night. There's another fight night next weekend where, as we talked about, another heavyweight main event with Jairzinho Rozenstruik's Cyril Gahn on the card. And Angela Hill, she's taking on Ashley Yoder. I mean, there's some fun fights on this one. Right now we have 13 fight booked, but you can expect somewhere, some way, we may lose one along the line. I mean, hopefully not. It'd be kind of nice to see a card go through without, a weight discrepancy or, an issue with COVID or anything like that. It'd be the first time in quite a while if that were to happen.
I mean, I can't see it getting hit quite like this card where we'll have like 2 or 3 fights fall out day of. But, I always expect between 1 and 4 to fall apart on fight week.
Well, Eric, thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your day with me to recap UFC on Vegas 19 as we get set for now UFC on Vegas 20 for next weekend. And of course, you just did the recap for the show up on Post Wrestling's website, all in written form. So if people want to check that out, and as well your content and all the great content that's on Post Wrestling, where can people find that?
postwrestling.com for all of the written articles that I was a part of, and you can check your podcast feeds, YouTube, Patreon, for various terms of their podcast forums. I've been on a few talking about MMA, occasionally some very, very bad superhero movies, all the good stuff.
And of course, you're also on some of the Twitch live streams that I know the Up Next guys have, and big fan of Sergeant Slaughter.
He's horrible, man. Like, he was so bad. I can't believe that dude main evented a WrestleMania.
A legend of the business. But all in all, Eric, thank you for your time. And hopefully, we'll get back together and recap one of these fight nights or a pay-per-view down the line. This is a new endeavor, so we'll see how it pans out. But once again, thanks for your time, and we'll look to hang out at some point in the future.
Thanks for having me. Sounds good.